Ambassador Ketherick sat alone in the great archive of the Galactic Confederation. His gray fingers moved across the floating screen as he read file after file about the human species. 300 years of records, 300 years of reports, trade agreements, and military assessments. He had been studying humans for 6 months now, and he still could not understand why they bothered him so much. On paper, humans were boring. They were not the strongest species in the galaxy. They were not the smartest. Their ships were decent but nothing special. Their weapons worked well enough. They had joined the Confederation 3 centuries ago after discovering faster-than-light travel, and since then, they had been helpful allies. Good traders, solid engineers, surprisingly good at solving arguments between other species. Average, Ketherick whispered to himself, completely average. But something did not feel right. He had met humans before. He had looked into their eyes, and sometimes, just for a moment, he saw something hiding behind their friendly smiles. Something old, something patient, something that made his 4 hearts beat a little faster. He shook his head and closed the files. He was being foolish. Humans were harmless. Far across the galaxy, Admiral Thesara stood before the High Council of the Confederation. She was a Kethmari, tall and proud, with 4 muscular arms and scales that shimmered like gold. She was the greatest military mind in known space, and today she was giving her yearly report on member species military strength. The humans maintain a fleet of approximately 4,000 vessels, she said, her voice echoing through the massive chamber. Their ground forces number around 2 million active soldiers. They have participated in 7 joint military operations in the past 50 years, including the Helix Wars. One of the council members, a floating sphere of light called a luminari, pulsed with curiosity. And their performance in the Helix Wars? Adequate, Thesara replied. They lost 200,000 soldiers, but helped secure victory alongside our other allies. They follow orders well, they fight bravely, but they rely heavily on support from stronger species in major battles. The council seemed satisfied. Humans were useful. That was enough. On Earth, in a building that did not appear on any map, General Marcus Cole walked down a long gray hallway. He was 63 years old, with silver hair and eyes that had seen too much. Armed guards stood at every door. Cameras watched from every corner. This facility existed in the space between secrets, known only to a handful of people across all human worlds. Cole entered a large conference room where 12 other officers waited. They wore no medals. Their uniforms had no markings. These were the keepers of humanity's greatest secret. 300 years, Cole said as he took his seat at the head of the table. 300 years of the doctrine of restraint, and our alien friends still think we are average. He allowed himself a small, tired smile. I suppose that means we are doing our job. A younger officer, Colonel Sarah Webb, pulled up a holographic display. It showed a simple pie chart comparing known military forces across the Confederation. According to their records, we rank 47th out of 200 member species in terms of military power, she said, right between the Torvax Mining Collective and the Philosophical Union of Grin. 47th, Cole repeated. My grandfather would have laughed himself sick. The doctrine of restraint had been created 300 years ago, in the months after humanity made first contact with alien life. The first humans to meet the Voranthi had been diplomats and scientists, carefully chosen for their calm nature. They had smiled. They had been polite. They had talked about peace and cooperation, and they had hidden everything else. The architects of the doctrine had understood something terrible. They had looked at the other species of the galaxy, at their small wars, their limited weapons, their gentle histories, and they had realized the truth. If the aliens ever learned what humans were really capable of, they would be terrified. They might even try to destroy humanity before humanity could destroy them. So humanity had made a choice. They would hide their true nature. They would pretend to be average. They would lock away their most powerful weapons, bury their bloodiest history, and teach their children to play nice with the other species. It was the greatest lie ever told, and it had worked perfectly. We have a new development, Webb said, changing the display. A star map appeared, showing a region of space near the galactic rim. The Thraxian Collective has been moving warships into the Archon cluster. Our intelligence suggests they are preparing to challenge Confederation authority in the region. Cole studied the map with cold eyes. The Thraxians were an aggressive reptilian species who had joined the Confederation only 50 years ago. They were always pushing boundaries, always testing limits. Now it seemed they were ready for something bigger. How many ships? Cole asked. 8,000 confirmed, possibly more in reserve. And the Confederation response? They are calling for a joint military action. All member species are expected to contribute forces. Webb paused. Including us. Cole was quiet for a long moment. Around the table, the other officers waited. They all knew what this meant. Human soldiers would be sent to fight alongside aliens. They would have to be careful. So very careful. Standard deployment only, Cole finally said. Nothing beyond Tier 3 weapons. Rules of engagement Alpha through Delta. No exceptions. He looked around the table, meeting each officer's eyes. We have kept this secret for 300 years. We will not break it now because some lizards want to play war. The officers nodded. They understood. They had all been raised with the same truth that every human learned from childhood. The galaxy was not ready to know what humans really were. It might never be ready. As the meeting ended and the officers filed out, Cole remained seated. He stared at the star map, at the tiny dots representing human colonies spread across 100 worlds. Billions of people, all keeping the same secret, all wearing the same mask. He thought about his granddaughter, just 7 years old, already learning in school about the doctrine of restraint, learning that humans must always be kind, always be gentle, always hold back. 300 years, he said to the empty room. I wonder how much longer we can keep pretending. Somewhere in the Arshan cluster, Thraxian warships were gathering. They thought they were preparing for a simple border war. They thought they knew their enemy. They had no idea what was coming. The war came faster than anyone expected. Within 3 weeks of the first shots being fired, the Thraxian collective had pushed deep into Confederation territory. Their ships were fast and brutal. Their soldiers feared nothing. And they had been planning this attack for years. Commander Yelena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the human cruiser Prometheus, watching the battle unfold on her tactical display. All around her, ships from a dozen different species were fighting for their lives. Lasers cut through the darkness. Missiles exploded in silent flowers of flame. And everywhere, the Thraxians kept coming. Commander, we have new orders from the Allied fleet, her communications officer reported. Admiral Thesara wants all human ships to move to Position 7 and provide support fire. Position 7, Vasquez repeated quietly. She looked at the display. Position 7 was in the back, far from the real fighting, safe, protected, useless. This was always how it went. The Confederation valued human ships, but they never trusted them with the important jobs. Humans were support. Humans were backup. Humans were there to fill numbers, not to win battles. Vasquez felt the old anger rising in her chest, but she pushed it down. She had her orders, not just from the Admiral, but from command back on Earth. Stay small, stay quiet, follow the rules of engagement, never show them what you can really do. Move us to Position 7, she ordered. For 3 hours the battle raged. The Confederation forces fought bravely, but the Thraxians had planned their trap well. They had hidden ships in the asteroid field. They had placed gravity mines in the retreat paths. And now as the Allied fleet tried to pull back, they sprung their final surprise. A massive gravity well opened in the center of the battlefield. Ships that tried to escape were pulled back like insects caught in honey. Engines screamed, hulls cracked. One by one, the Allied vessels began to die. We are caught in the gravity trap, Vasquez's pilot reported, his voice tight with fear. Engines at maximum, but we are not moving. We are actually being pulled in. On the main screen, Vasquez watched a Luminari ship collapse in on itself, crushed by the impossible gravity. A Varanthi destroyer broke apart, spilling bodies into space. The screaming on the communication channels was constant now. Species she had never heard cry out in pain were crying out now. And then the Thraxian flagship appeared. It was enormous, a mountain of metal and weapons. and it was broadcasting a message on all channels. "Surrender now," the Thraxian commander said, his reptilian face filling every screen in the fleet. "Surrender and you will be taken as prisoners. Fight and you will be destroyed. You have 1 minute to decide." Admiral Thasara's voice came over the command channel. She sounded broken. All ships, prepare to surrender. We cannot win this. We must save who we can." Around Vasquez, her crew looked at her with desperate eyes. They were humans. They did not surrender. It was not in their blood. But the rules of engagement were clear. Follow Allied command. Do not reveal capabilities. Do not escalate. "Commander," her weapons officer said quietly, "we have Cargo Bay 7. Vasquez felt her blood turn cold. Cargo Bay 7. Every human warship carried one, sealed with locks that only the captain could open. Inside were weapons that officially did not exist. Emergency weapons. Last resort weapons. Weapons from before the doctrine of restraint. "We cannot," Vasquez whispered. "The rules are clear. Commander, they are going to kill us anyway. Look at them. They are not taking prisoners. They are destroying escape pods." Vasquez looked at her screen. The weapons officer was right. The Thraxians were shooting at anything that moved. Escape pods, medical ships, surrender signals meant nothing to them. She thought about her crew, 47 men and women who trusted her. She thought about her daughter back on Earth, only 12 years old. She thought about 300 years of secrets, of lies, of pretending to be weak. And then she thought about what the Thraxians would do if they won this war. How many worlds they would burn. How many children would never see their parents again. "Open Cargo Bay 7, she said. Her voice did not shake. "Authorization Vasquez 77 read. Load the Erebus Lance." Her weapons officer stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded and began typing commands. Deep in the ship, ancient locks clicked open. A weapon that had not been fired in 200 years began to wake up. It was called the Erebus Lance, and it had been designed in the dark days before first contact, when humans still pointed their worst weapons at each other. "Lance's charge," the weapons officer reported. "Target?" Vasquez looked at the Thraxian flagship, at the ships behind it, at the entire enemy fleet that thought they had already won. "All of them," she said. The Erebus Lance fired. There was no sound in space, but Vasquez could have sworn she heard thunder. A beam of pure white light shot from the Prometheus and struck the Thraxian flagship. It did not stop there. It went through the flagship and hit the destroyer behind it, and the cruiser behind that, and the 3 battleships behind that. 5 ships, 1 shot. Nothing left but dust. The gravity well collapsed. The Thraxian fleet, suddenly missing its command ship and its best vessels, fell into chaos. They ran. They actually ran, these warriors who feared nothing, ran from a single human cruiser like children running from a monster. Silence fell over the communication channels. Every ship in the Allied fleet, every species in the Confederation, had seen what just happened. They had seen a human weapon do the impossible. Admiral Thasara's voice came over the channel. It was barely a whisper. "Commander Vasquez, wow, what was that weapon?" Vasquez closed her eyes. 300 years of secrecy, destroyed in a single moment. She would face court-martial for this. She would probably spend the rest of her life in prison. But her crew was alive. The fleet was saved. She would make that trade every time. "Experimental," she said. "A prototype. It will not happen again." But even as she spoke, she knew the lie would not hold. Across the fleet, sensors had recorded everything. Scientists would analyze the data. Intelligence officers would ask questions. The mask had cracked, and soon everyone would want to see what was hiding underneath. Far away on a Varanthi diplomatic station, Ambassador Kethrix received the battle reports. He read them 3 times, his gray hands trembling. A single human ship had destroyed 5 Thraxian vessels with 1 shot. 1 shot from a weapon that was not in any database, not in any record, not in any file he had ever seen. He pulled up the human military records he had studied for so long. 4,000 ships, 2 million soldiers, adequate performance. "Lies," he whispered. It was all lies. He began to search for the truth. He did not know that the truth would be far worse than anything he could imagine. Ambassador Kethrix had not slept in 4 days. His eyes burned, his hands shook, but he could not stop searching. The truth was out there somewhere, hidden behind walls of encryption and centuries of careful lies. He had started with the official records. The history of humanity as presented to the Confederation was simple and clean. Humans evolved on a planet called Earth. They developed technology. They found peace. They reached for the stars. A happy story about a happy species. But the official records had holes in them. Big holes. Entire centuries were summarized in a few paragraphs. Wars were mentioned but never explained. Numbers did not add up. The more Kethrix looked, the more questions he found. So he started looking in unofficial places, black markets, underground data networks, stolen files from human colony worlds. Piece by piece, he began to build a different picture, a darker picture. And then he found her. Dr. Elena Vasquez was 97 years old, living alone in a small house on Titan, one of Saturn's moons. She had been a xenohistorian, a scholar who studied how different species recorded their own past. She had been present at the debates after first contact, when humanity decided how much to tell the galaxy. Getting to her was not easy. Kethrix had to travel in secret, using fake identification and bribing 3 different customs officials. But finally he stood at her door, his 4 hearts beating fast with fear and excitement. The old woman who answered looked at him with eyes that held no surprise. "I wondered when one of you would come," she said. "You had better come inside." Her house was full of books, real books, made of paper, a technology so old that most species had forgotten it existed. She made tea, moving slowly, and Kethrix waited in respectful silence. "You want to know about the weapon?" she said, sitting down across from him. "The one my granddaughter used." "I want to know everything," Kethrix replied. "I want to know what you are hiding." Dr. Vasquez laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Young one, I am 97 years old. I have kept this secret my entire life. I have watched humanity pretend to be sheep while knowing we are wolves. And I am tired." She reached for a small device on her table. "So yes, I will show you everything. And may God forgive me for it." She pressed a button, and the wall behind her came alive with images. Old images. Images from before first contact, from the dark days of human history. The first image showed a mushroom cloud rising over a city. "This is called a nuclear weapon," Dr. Vasquez said calmly. "We invented it in 1945. By 1960, we had built over 70,000 of them, all pointed at each other." Kethrix stared at the image. 70,000. The entire Confederation military had fewer than 5,000 nuclear devices combined. "You used these weapons on your own people?" "Twice. 2 cities destroyed in seconds. Over 200,000 people killed immediately. Many more died later from the poison in the air and water." She changed the image to show the ruins of a city, bodies lying in the streets. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was that after this, we built more. We spent 50 years pointing these weapons at each other, ready to destroy our entire species over political disagreements. The images kept coming. Trenches filled with dead soldiers. Factories built to kill people by the thousands. Camps where millions were starved and burned. Chemical weapons that made men drown in their own lungs. Diseases designed to kill specific races of humans. "In what you call the 20th century alone, we killed over 200 million of our own kind," Dr. Vasquez said. "Not aliens, not enemies from the stars. Each other. Brothers killing brothers, fathers killing sons. And we did not stop because we learned to be peaceful. We only slowed down because we became afraid that the next war would leave no one alive." Kethrix felt sick. His species, the Varanthi, had known war. They had fought battles, lost soldiers, felt the pain of conflict. But their worst war had killed perhaps 50,000. They had considered it a tragedy beyond measure. Humans had killed 50,000 in a single afternoon and called it a battle. "In 2089, there was a global collapse," Dr. Vasquez continued. "Economic systems failed. Governments fell. Wars broke out across the planet. 3 billion people died in 15 years. She paused to let that number sink in. 3 billion. And we recovered. Within 60 years, we had rebuilt everything. It was considered a setback, nothing more. The images changed again, showing soldiers in advanced armor, weapons that made the Erebus lance look like a toy. By the time we achieved faster-than-light travel, we had weapons capable of destroying stars, not damaging them, destroying them. We had viruses that could target specific genetic codes and kill entire bloodlines. We had psychological weapons that could drive entire populations insane. We had developed war into an art form, and we were very, very good at it. Why? Kethrix whispered. Why would any species do this to itself? Dr. Vasquez was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was sad. Because we evolved on a world that wanted us dead. Every creature, every disease, every natural disaster on Earth taught us the same lesson. Survive or die. We became the most dangerous animal on our planet because we had to be. And when we ran out of natural enemies, we turned on each other. She showed him one final image, a photograph, very old, showing a city that had been turned to ash. In the center, a building remained standing, its dome somehow surviving the blast that had destroyed everything around it. This is Hiroshima, she said. August 6, 1945, the first time we used a nuclear weapon against a city. 80,000 people died in seconds. And do you know what happened next? She looked at Kethrix with ancient, tired eyes. We did it again, 3 days later, to another city, because once was not enough to make our point. Kethrix stood up. His legs were shaking. His mind was spinning with numbers and images he could not process. 200 million dead. 3 billion dead. Weapons that could end stars. A species that had spent its entire history learning how to kill. And they had been hiding among the Confederation for 300 years, pretending to be average. You understand now, Dr. Vasquez said softly. We are not peaceful because we want to be. We are peaceful because we know what happens if we are not. Every human child learns this truth. We are monsters who chose to become something better. But the monster is still inside us. It will always be inside us. She handed him a small data chip. This contains everything, the unedited history, the full weapon inventories, the real size of our military. Take it. Show it to your council. They deserve to know what they have been sleeping next to all these years. Kethrix took the chip with trembling hands. What will happen when they learn the truth? Dr. Vasquez smiled, but there was no joy in it. That depends on how smart they are. The smart ones will be afraid. They will treat humanity with new respect. They will never threaten us again. Her smile faded. The foolish ones will see this as a threat that must be destroyed. They will try to strike first. And if they do, the old woman looked at him with eyes that had seen too much history. Then they will learn the hardest lesson of all. Humanity did not survive for 200,000 years by being weak. We survive because when something tries to destroy us, we destroy it first. Completely. Forever. She stood and walked to her window, looking out at the stars. We have been holding back for 300 years. Pray to whatever gods you believe in that we never have a reason to stop. That night, Kethrix transmitted the data to the Varanthi High Command. He did not know that Thraxian spies would intercept the transmission. He did not know that within hours every major power in the galaxy would have access to humanity's darkest secrets. The truth was finally free, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Great Hall of the Confederation had never been so full. Representatives from all 200 member species had gathered, filling every seat, every balcony, every available space. Some floated in special chambers. Others watched through screens from across the galaxy. But all of them had come for the same reason. Humanity was on trial. High Chancellor Vorn stood at the center of the chamber. He was a Kralith, a towering insectoid creature with compound eyes that saw everything and a voice that carried like thunder. He had led the Confederation for 40 years, and he had never felt fear. But today, looking at the human delegation seated calmly before him, he felt something cold crawling up his spine. The charges are as follows, Vorn announced, his voice echoing through the hall. Espionage against member species, falsification of official records, concealment of weapons of mass destruction, violation of the transparency accords that every member species must sign. He paused, letting the weight of the accusations fill the room. How does humanity plead? The human ambassador, David Okonkwo, rose from his seat. He was a tall man with dark skin and gray hair, his face calm and unreadable. He wore a simple black suit, no medals, no decorations. He looked like an accountant, not a representative of monsters. "Before we enter a plea," Okonkwo said, his voice steady, "I would like to ask the council a question. How was this information obtained?" Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Vorn's compound eyes narrowed. "That is not relevant to these proceedings." "I think it is very relevant. You received this data from Ambassador Kethrix, who stole it from a private citizen on a human colony world. Under Confederation law, that is also espionage. Yet I do not see the Varanthe on trial today." Okonkwo smiled slightly. "But I did not come here to argue about laws. You want the truth about humanity. Fine. I am authorized to give it to you." He pressed a button on the small device in his hand. The massive screens around the chamber flickered to life, showing humanity's true military records. "Let us start with the lies you know about," Okonkwo said. "You believe we have 4,000 ships. The actual number is 340,000, including 12,000 vessels capable of destroying planets. You believe we have 2 million soldiers. The actual number of combat-ready humans across all our worlds is 40 billion. Every human colony practices mandatory military training. Every adult human is a potential soldier." The chamber erupted in noise. Species screamed, species fainted. The Thraxian delegation, already nervous after their defeat, looked ready to flee. Okonkwo waited for the noise to die down before continuing. "You believe the Erebus Lance was a prototype. It was actually obsolete 50 years ago. We have weapons that make it look like a child's toy. We can collapse stars. We can create black holes. We can engineer viruses that will kill every member of a specific species while leaving everyone else unharmed." He let those words hang in the air. "We have had these capabilities for over a century. We have never used them. Not once." High Chancellor Vorn found his voice. "Why? Why hide all of this? What do you want from us?" Okonkwo looked at him with something that might have been pity. "You still do not understand. We were not hiding our power to threaten you. We were hiding it to protect you." He changed the display to show images from human history, the mushroom clouds, the death camps, the burned cities and the mass graves. "This is what we did to ourselves," Okonkwo said quietly. "Before we ever met another intelligent species, we spent thousands of years learning how to kill. We developed war into a science. We created weapons that could end all life on our planet, and we pointed them at each other. We killed billions of our own kind over politics, religion, and resources." He turned to face the entire chamber. "When we made first contact, we looked at you, all of you. Your wars were small, your weapons were primitive, your worst atrocities were things we would have considered minor incidents, and we realized something terrible." The chamber was absolutely silent now. Every eye, every sensor, every attention was focused on the human ambassador. "We realized that if you ever learned what we truly were, you would be afraid. And afraid species do stupid things. They attack. They try to destroy the threat before the threat destroys them. And then we would have to respond. Not because we wanted to, but because that is what we are. When something threatens our survival, we eliminate it. Completely. We have done it 1,000 times throughout our history. We would do it again without hesitation." Okonkwo's voice grew harder. "So we made a choice. We created the doctrine of restraint. We hid our weapons. We buried our history. We taught our children to play nice with the other species, to pretend to be average, to never show their true strength. Not because we were afraid of you, because we were afraid of ourselves." He looked at High Chancellor Vorn directly. "You ask why we hid. We hid because we know what we are. We are monsters who learn to wear masks. Every human is born with the capacity for terrible violence. It is in our blood, in our genes, in our very souls. The only thing that keeps us from becoming the worst nightmare this galaxy has ever seen is our choice not to be." Admiral Thassara, the Kethmari military strategist, stood up. Her forearms were trembling. "And if that choice changes, if you decide to stop, holding back," Okonkwo met her eyes, "then you should pray that you are already dead, because what comes next would make your worst nightmares look peaceful. Silence filled the chamber. Then slowly the Thraxian High Commander rose. His scales had gone pale. His claws were shaking. We withdraw from the war, he said, his voice cracking. All territorial claims, all demands. We want nothing from the humans, nothing. Within minutes, other species followed. Treaties were offered, apologies were made. 300 years of carefully balanced power shifted in an instant as every species in the galaxy realized the same truth. They had been living next to a sleeping giant, and they had been very, very lucky that it had chosen not to wake up. As the session ended, Okonkwo walked toward the exit. Ambassador Kethrix intercepted him, the Varanthi's gray face still pale with shock. I have to know, Kethrix said. Was any of it real? The cooperation? The friendship? The 3 centuries of working together? Okonkwo stopped. For a moment his mask slipped, and Kethrix saw something underneath. Not the monster he had feared. Something sadder. Something tired. Yes, Okonkwo said quietly. It was real. We genuinely want peace. We genuinely want to be friends. That is not a lie. He paused. But friendship does not change what we are. Every human you have ever met, every human you have ever worked with or laughed with or trusted carries the same darkness inside them. We simply choose not to let it out. He started walking again, then stopped at the door. The doctrine of restraint has held for 300 years. I hope it holds for 300 more. For everyone's sake. He left Kethrix standing alone in the empty chamber, surrounded by the images of human history that still glowed on the screens. The mushroom clouds, the death camps, the weapons that could end stars. And somewhere in those images, hidden beneath the horror, the truth that Kethrix could not escape. Those monsters had chosen to be kind. For 300 years, they had chosen peace when they could have chosen war. Perhaps that was the most frightening thing of all. 1 year had passed since the revelation, and the galaxy had changed forever. No one called it the human secret anymore. They called it the awakening, the moment when every species in the Confederation realized they had been sharing space with something ancient and terrible, something that had been holding back its true nature out of kindness. The fear came first. For months, species moved their colonies away from human space. Trade routes were redirected, diplomatic communications became careful, polite, and very, very respectful. No one wanted to be the one who accidentally angered humanity. But slowly the fear began to change into something else. Some species looked at humans with new respect. If these monsters could choose to be peaceful, perhaps there was hope for everyone. Young races, still learning their place in the galaxy, began to study human philosophy. The doctrine of restraint became required reading in schools across 100 worlds. On Earth, things changed too. For the first time in 300 years, humans talked openly about their past. The doctrine of restraint was no longer a secret, but a point of pride. Schools taught children about the old wars, the terrible weapons, the millions of dead. But they also taught something else, the choice to be better. We are not great because of what we can destroy, the teacher said. We are great because of what we choose not to. General Marcus Cole had retired now, living in a small house on a hill overlooking old Chicago. The city had been rebuilt 3 times in human history, destroyed by war and disaster and human stupidity, and it always came back. Cole thought that said something important about his species. His granddaughter Maya sat beside him on the porch. She was 8 years old now, with bright eyes and endless questions. Today she wanted to know why humans were so different from other species. Cole thought for a long moment before answering. We come from a world that tried to kill us every day, he said. The weather, the animals, the diseases, everything on Earth wanted us dead. So we learned to be strong. We learned to be clever. We learned to be dangerous. But we are not dangerous now, Maya said. We are nice to everyone. We are nice because we choose to be. That is the hard part, Maya. Being strong is easy. Being kind when you are strong, that is what matters. He put his arm around her small shoulders. Every human carries 2 wolves inside them. One wolf is angry and cruel and wants to destroy everything. The other wolf is gentle and kind and wants to protect everyone. Do you know which wolf wins? Maya shook her head. The one you feed, Cole said. For 300 years, we have been feeding the gentle wolf. That does not mean the other wolf is gone. It means we have made a choice about who we want to be. Maya leaned against him, thinking about this. What happens if the angry wolf gets out? Cole looked at the sky, at the stars that held 1,000 species, who now looked at humanity with fear and wonder. Then we hope we can put it back before it does too much damage. 3 months later, everything changed again. The first reports came from the Outer Rim, from colonies so far away that their messages took days to arrive. Strange ships had appeared, huge ships, bigger than anything the Confederation had ever seen. They did not respond to communications. They did not negotiate. They simply attacked. The Vethkai had arrived. No one knew where they came from. Some scientists thought they were from another galaxy entirely, travelers who had crossed the void between stars. Others thought they were something older, something that had been sleeping in the darkness for millions of years. It did not matter. What mattered was what they did. In 3 weeks, the Vethkai destroyed 17 colonies. They did not conquer. They did not enslave. They simply killed everything in their path and moved on to the next target. Their ships absorbed weapons fire like water. Their soldiers felt no pain, no fear, no mercy. The Confederation sent fleets. The fleets did not come back. On the floor of the Great Hall, where humanity had revealed its secrets 1 year ago, High Chancellor Vorn addressed the survivors. His voice was broken. His compound eyes were dull with despair. We have lost 47 worlds, he said. 12 species have been completely wiped out. Our combined fleets have been reduced by half. We have no more strategies. We have no more weapons. He paused, his insectoid body trembling. We have only one option left. He turned to the human delegation. Ambassador Okonkwo sat in the same seat he had occupied during the trial, his face as calm as ever. Beside him sat Commander Yellen Vasquez, now Admiral Vasquez, the woman who had first cracked the mask. We are asking, Vorn said, the words clearly painful for him, for humanity's help, full help, unrestricted help. He lowered his massive head. We are asking you to stop holding back. The chamber was silent. Every species remembered what they had learned about humans, the weapons that could end stars, the soldiers who never stopped fighting, the capacity for violence that made the Thraxians look like children. Okonkwo stood slowly. He looked around the chamber at the frightened faces, the desperate eyes, the species who had spent a year being afraid of him. Then he looked at Admiral Vasquez and nodded. 300 years ago, Okonkwo said, we made a promise to ourselves. We would not unleash our true nature on the galaxy. We would be kind. We would be gentle. We would hold back the monster inside us. He paused. But there is one exception to the doctrine of restraint. One situation where the monster is allowed out. He pressed a button on his communication device. Across human space, in hidden bases and secret facilities, alarms began to sound. Ships that had been sleeping for decades began to wake up. Soldiers who had trained their whole lives for a moment that might never come received the call they had been waiting for. When something threatens not just humanity but everyone, Okonkwo continued, when the choice is between restraint and extinction, we are permitted to become what we truly are. On the screens around the chamber, images appeared. Human fleets, vast beyond counting, emerging from hidden bases. Weapons that had not been seen in centuries coming online. Soldiers in armor that made them look like demons from ancient nightmares. The doctrine of restraint, Okonkwo announced, is hereby suspended. Admiral Vasquez stepped forward. Her eyes were cold, focused, completely without fear. We need all intelligence on the Vethkai. Ship positions, weapon frequencies, attack patterns. Everything you have, we need it now. Chancellor Vorn transmitted the data with trembling claws. What? What are you going to do? Vasquez looked at him, and for the first time, Vorn saw the monster behind the mask. Not angry, not cruel, just absolutely, completely determined. We are going to do what humans have always done when something threatens our survival, she said. We are going to end them. The human fleets moved out within hours. 340,000 ships, 12,000 planet crackers, 40 billion soldiers ready to fight. The galaxy watched in terrified awe as the sleeping giant finally rose. The first battle with the Vethkai lasted 6 hours. The humans lost 8,000 ships. The Vethkai lost everything. The second battle was shorter. The third shorter still. The Vethkai, who had never faced real resistance, did not understand what was happening to them. They did not understand that they were fighting a species that had spent its entire existence learning how to destroy. Humanity did not fight like other species. They fought like humans. They used tricks that the galaxy had never seen. They sacrificed ships to gain advantages. They turned the Vethkai's own technology against them. They were ruthless, efficient, and absolutely without mercy. In the end, it took 3 months. 3 months to destroy an enemy that had been wiping out entire civilizations for centuries. The last Vethkai ship was cornered near a dead star, surrounded by human vessels. Admiral Vasquez gave the final order. No survivors, no records, no possibility of return. Make them nothing. The Vethkai became nothing. When the war was over, humanity returned to its planets. The fleets went back to their hidden bases. The weapons went back to sleep, and the doctrine of restraint was restored. But nothing was the same. The galaxy had seen what humans could do when they stopped holding back. They had seen the monster unleashed, and they had seen something else too. They had seen the monster choose to go back into its cage. On Earth, General Cole sat with his granddaughter again, watching the celebrations in the streets below. Humanity had saved the galaxy. For one brief moment, they had been heroes. "Grandpa," Maya asked, "are we still the good wolf?" Cole thought about the Vethkai, about the billions of alien creatures who had died under human weapons. He thought about the darkness that still lived inside every human heart, and he thought about the choice they had made to stop, to put the monster away, to return to being kind. "Yes," he said finally, "we are still the good wolf. We just had to show our teeth for a while." In the Great Hall of the Confederation, Ambassador Ketherick stood alone, looking at the stars. He thought about everything he had learned in the past year. The fear, the horror, the revelation, and finally, the salvation. Humans were monsters. That was true. But they were monsters who had chosen to protect the weak, to save the helpless, to fight the darkness when no one else could. Perhaps that was what made them the most human of all. The galaxy was safe now. The sleeping giant had gone back to sleep. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, other threats were watching, waiting, wondering if they should attack. They had all learned the same lesson now. Let the humans sleep. You really did not want to wake them up.